Mark was just another face in the crowd. He didn't have anything special about him. He was an average guy with an ordinary life, working at a small tech company, trying to make ends meet. He often spent his lunch breaks at a little cafe near the spaceport, watching the bustling crowds of aliens from distant worlds. Today, like any other day, he sat in the corner, sipping his coffee and watching the comings and goings of travelers. The streets outside the cafe were alive with the sounds of various alien languages and the hum of spaceships taking off and landing. Mark often found it fascinating how these different species, with their strange customs and cultures, coexisted in the same place. As he stared out the window, his gaze fell on an old alien sitting by the side of the road, near the entrance to the spaceport. This alien was unlike the others. He was small, with wrinkled green skin and a cane in his hand, struggling to carry a small bundle of belongings. His eyes were tired, and his posture was slouched, as though life had weighed him down. People walked past him, some giving him curious glances, others ignoring him completely. The alien's clothes were worn, and he appeared to be just another forgotten traveler. Mark felt a sudden pull in his chest. It wasn't anything grand, just a simple feeling of compassion. The old man looked like he was in need, and Mark, though he wasn't the most outgoing, couldn't ignore the feeling. He stood up, grabbed a few extra credits from his pocket, and walked over. "Excuse me, sir," Mark said softly, approaching the alien. The old man looked up, his tired eyes locking onto Mark's. There was something about his gaze that seemed to pierce through the surface, as though he could see right into Mark's soul. The alien's voice was weak, but it carried a sense of urgency. "Could you help me?" the old alien asked, his accent heavy and unfamiliar. "I have enough credits, but they will not accept my payment. I need to return home to my people." Mark was confused at first. He wasn't sure if the alien was asking for charity or just explaining his situation. The spaceport was known for being busy, and there were many strange customs involved in space travel. Still, the old alien's desperation was clear. Mark looked at him for a moment, weighing his options. It was a lot of money, more than he had ever spent in one go, but it wasn't like he had anything urgent to spend it on. Without thinking too much, Mark nodded and pulled out his wallet. He handed the alien enough credits to buy the ticket. The alien's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, Mark wondered if he had made a mistake. But then the alien smiled, a slow and faint expression, and his voice became soft but filled with gratitude. "You have a kind heart, young human," the alien said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for this. I will not forget your generosity." Mark smiled back, feeling good about his decision. "It's nothing," he said. "Just take care of yourself." The alien nodded again, slowly, as if every movement was an effort. He turned and began to walk away, clutching the credits in his hand like they were the most precious thing in the world. As he took a few steps, he paused and looked back at Mark with an odd expression. "There is something you do not yet understand," the alien said cryptically, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you will soon." Before Mark could ask what he meant, the alien disappeared into the crowd. Mark stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where he had been. His mind raced. What did the alien mean by that? Why did he feel like something big was about to happen? Mark brushed it off as nothing more than an odd encounter. It was a strange thing, but he'd done a good deed. That should be enough, right? As he walked back to his table, a strange sensation washed over him. A hum, almost like the air itself was vibrating. He stopped, his hand gripping the back of his chair as he looked out the window. The sky was darkening, but there was something in the air, something different. Suddenly, the sound of engines filled the air. Mark's heart raced as he turned toward the source. 3 massive ships appeared in the sky, their sleek, shiny surfaces reflecting the city lights. They were not like anything he had ever seen before. They glided silently, their designs both elegant and terrifying. a symbol of power that made Mark's blood run cold. The ships hovered for a moment, and then, as quickly as they had appeared, they began to descend. The crowd around Mark seemed to notice them at the same time, their eyes wide in fear and wonder. No one moved, as if they were frozen in place. Mark felt a shiver run down his spine. What was going on? Why were these ships here? And why did he feel like he was somehow connected to this moment? Just as the ships touched down, Mark's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his fingers trembling slightly. A message flashed on the screen. "You've made a mistake, Mark. They're coming for you. You can't undo what's been set in motion." Mark stared at the words, his mind racing. What had he done? The old alien had said something about not understanding, but now it all made sense. This wasn't a random encounter. Something bigger was happening, and Mark was in the middle of it. As the ships powered down, the ground trembled beneath his feet, and a voice echoed in his ear, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from nowhere. "Mark, step forward. You are needed." Mark's heart raced. His life would never be the same again. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The strange alien encounter, the cryptic message, and the 3 ships descending from the sky, it all felt like the beginning of something far bigger than he could comprehend. He spent the next few days in a haze, unable to focus on anything. His usual routine seemed distant, and the familiar faces at his workplace felt like strangers. The memory of the old alien and the bizarre events that followed kept him up at night. But what troubled him the most was the message that appeared on his phone. "You've made a mistake, Mark. They're coming for you. You can't undo what's been set in motion." Every time he read those words, the unease deepened. He kept the message locked away in his phone, too afraid to delete it. There was a strange sense of urgency building inside him, but he couldn't figure out what it meant. Who was this message from? What was he supposed to do? Mark tried to go about his days, but his focus was shattered. Even walking down the street felt different, like the air itself was charged with anticipation. One evening, after a long day at work, Mark decided to visit the same cafe where he'd met the old alien, hoping for a moment of clarity. Maybe it would help him process the strange events of the past few days. The cafe was quiet when he entered, the soft hum of conversation in the background. As he ordered a coffee and sat by the window, he noticed something unusual, an unfamiliar figure seated at the far end of the room. The man, dressed in a long dark coat and hood, seemed to blend in with the shadows. His eyes locked onto Mark's the moment he entered, and Mark felt an odd jolt of recognition, though he couldn't place where he had seen him before. The figure slowly stood and walked toward him. Mark's pulse quickened. There was something unnerving about the way the man moved, fluid, like he didn't belong in the world around him. The figure stopped at Mark's table and gestured for him to listen. Mark hesitated, his instincts screaming that he should walk away, but something compelled him to stay. "You've already met the old alien," the man said, his voice low and calm. "Now you'll meet those who are coming for you." Mark's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced. Who was this man, and how did he know about the alien? How could he know about the message on his phone? The stranger pulled out a small device and held it up, showing Mark an image of the 3 spaceships that had landed at the spaceport. "These ships are not just vessels," the man continued. "They are symbols. They've been waiting for the right moment to come for you. You've activated something, Mark, a signal that's been dormant for centuries." Mark felt a chill creep down his spine. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man leaned in closer, his eyes sharp and intense. "You don't understand it yet, but you will. Those ships are from a faction of an Intergalactic Council, one that oversees all peace treaties and negotiations. And you, Mark, are a part of it. You're a key player in a game you don't even know you've entered." Mark stared at the image on the device, his thoughts a jumble of confusion and fear. "I just helped an old man. I don't understand. What's happening? The man nodded slowly. It wasn't just an act of kindness. You were chosen, Mark. The alien you helped was more than he seemed. His people are ancient, their influence far-reaching. And now your life is tied to theirs in ways you can't even begin to imagine. Mark felt the weight of the man's words press down on him. He had done something simple, something most people would have done without a second thought. But now the consequences were unraveling before him, and he had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. The stranger paused, giving Mark a moment to process. Then, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small metallic device, a communicator. This will help you. You'll need it when they come for you. The countdown has already started. Mark blinked, confused. The countdown? What are you talking about? The man gave him a cold, unreadable look. You'll see. Soon enough. Before Mark could ask any more questions, the man turned and walked away, leaving Mark to grapple with the overwhelming truth he had just learned. The message wasn't a warning, it was an invitation, a call to a destiny he had never asked for. As the man disappeared into the shadows, Mark's phone buzzed again. He quickly pulled it out, his heart racing. Another message appeared. The first ship has left. They are coming for you. The second will be here soon. Prepare yourself. Mark's blood ran cold. He was running out of time. Mark didn't sleep that night. The events of the past few days were like a storm inside his mind, chaotic, unrelenting, and growing stronger with every passing hour. He couldn't shake the image of the 3 massive spaceships that had appeared in the sky, nor could he forget the mysterious man's cryptic words. The countdown had begun, and now Mark found himself caught in a game that he didn't even know existed. The next morning, Mark tried to continue his normal routine. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't focus on anything. The office, his colleagues, even the lunch break he once enjoyed, it all felt distant, irrelevant. His mind kept returning to the alien encounter and the strange warning he had received. There was a feeling inside him, an unease that gnawed at him, making it impossible to escape. Then, the impossible happened. Mark was standing at the bus stop when he looked up at the sky. It was a quiet afternoon, but that stillness was shattered by a sudden roar. He spun around, his heart racing, and there they were, 3 massive ships, gliding through the sky with eerie precision. They were exactly like the ones he had seen earlier, their sleek designs reflecting the sun's fading light. For a moment, Mark thought he was hallucinating, his mind playing tricks on him. But then, just as the ships began to descend, his phone buzzed again, snapping him back to reality. Mark, they've arrived. Get to the spaceport now. Trust no one else. Mark froze, the words pulsing in his mind. He had no choice. He had to move, and fast. The spaceport was a short walk away, but Mark felt like every step was being watched. He couldn't shake the sensation that something or someone was following him. As he neared the spaceport entrance, the crowd around him seemed to part, the air growing thick with tension. There were no signs of panic, but everyone knew something extraordinary was happening. And then, he saw them. The ships landed gracefully, their massive frames casting long shadows across the ground. The crowd around him stood still, mesmerized, as 3 figures in dark, high-tech armor emerged from the ships. They were tall, imposing, and moved with a precise mechanical grace. Their eyes, hidden behind sleek visors, scanned the area as if looking for someone, and Mark had the sinking feeling they were looking for him. The figures walked toward him without hesitation, their boots clicking against the pavement, a sound that echoed in the sudden silence. Mark's heart raced, his thoughts a jumble. The air was thick with electricity, like something momentous was about to happen. One of the figures stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. Mark, you are required. Come with us. Mark's body tensed, his mind screaming at him to run. But something inside him stopped him from moving, something powerful, like an invisible force pushing him toward them. He knew he had no choice. The figure reached out, and Mark's feet seemed to move on their own, guided by some unseen hand. He followed them to the ship, the crowd still staring in stunned silence. As he climbed aboard, the ramp closed behind him, sealing him in with the 3 elite soldiers. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was cold, sterile, and strangely silent. The 3 figures removed their helmets, revealing their faces. They were humanoid, but their features were sharp, almost inhuman. Their eyes were unnervingly calm, as though they had seen too much and felt nothing. Mark could sense the weight of their presence, like they were more than just soldiers. They were something else entirely. The one in the center, a tall man with pale skin and silver hair, stepped forward. "Mark, you've been chosen." The act of kindness you showed the alien was more than a simple gesture. It was a signal, a key that unlocked something ancient. Mark's confusion deepened. "What are you talking about? What's going on?" The man's gaze hardened. "You've triggered a series of events. Mark, the ships you saw descending are from the Intergalactic Council, an organization that maintains peace across galaxies. Your involvement is no longer a choice. You are part of something much bigger. Now you've crossed into a conflict that spans worlds." Mark's breath caught in his throat. "A conflict? What conflict?" "I just helped someone. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." The silver-haired man nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "That's the problem. You never meant for this. But now that you've awakened the pact, there's no turning back. You are the key to a delicate balance, one that could tip the scales of intergalactic power. You will either help us, or you will be silenced." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Mark swallowed hard, his mind racing. This wasn't just about a random encounter with an alien. It was about the fate of entire galaxies. And now he was right in the middle of it. "Why me?" Mark whispered. "Why was I chosen?" The soldier looked at him with a mixture of pity and coldness. "You were chosen because you are human. And humanity holds a power that the other species fear, something they don't fully understand yet. You are the key to peace or to war." The ship's engines hummed to life, and Mark was thrust into his seat, the reality of the situation settling in like a heavy weight. There was no turning back now. He was in this, whatever this was, whether he wanted to be or not. As the ship lifted off into the vastness of space, Mark gazed out the window. The earth below was shrinking, and with it, everything he had known. He was leaving behind his ordinary life, stepping into a new world, a world where his actions could change everything. The countdown had started. Mark didn't know how long the journey lasted. The time seemed to stretch endlessly as the ship rocketed through the stars, its engines humming softly. The outside world faded into nothingness, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The 3 elite soldiers remained eerily silent, as though their purpose was to be there, but not to explain anything further. The silver-haired man, who had introduced himself as Commander Thal, had been the most forthcoming of the group, but even his words were vague, leaving Mark with more questions than answers. All he knew for sure was that he had become a part of something much bigger, something that could affect not just his life, but the fate of entire galaxies. As the ship finally slowed, Mark felt a strange sensation of gravity shifting beneath his feet. The hum of the engines died down, and he was gently escorted down a long corridor that led deeper into the heart of the vessel. The walls were sleek and polished, and the air was cold, almost clinical. Everything about the ship screamed advanced technology, something far beyond anything Mark had ever seen on Earth. "Welcome to the Nexus," Commander Thal said as they reached a large chamber, its walls lined with glowing panels and holographic screens. Mark looked around, impressed but also unsettled. This place didn't feel like a typical military command center. It felt like a nexus somewhere between dimensions, somewhere that transcended everything Mark knew. The other 2 soldiers, both of whom hadn't spoken much, stood at attention near the entrance, their eyes constantly scanning the room. Mark noticed that despite their robotic behavior, they seemed to be waiting for something, as if they were not entirely in control of their own actions. "Take a seat," Thal ordered, gesturing to a chair at a sleek table. Mark hesitated but did as instructed. He sat down, feeling small in the presence of these powerful beings, all while his mind spun with unanswered questions. The silence stretched out before Thal spoke again. "You're likely wondering why we've brought you here," he began, his eyes meeting Mark's. "You're also likely questioning your involvement in all of this." Mark swallowed hard. "Yes," he answered simply, unable to mask the frustration in his voice. "I don't understand. I helped an alien, that's it. Why are all of you so determined to drag me into this?" Thal's lips pressed into a thin line, as though he were choosing his words carefully. "The alien you helped was no ordinary being. He was a member of the Sarthan Order, a faction that once ruled over half the galaxies. But when the peace treaty was formed, the Sarthans were forced to retreat into the shadows, their influence diminished. Your action, however, awoke something dormant inside them, something they have been waiting to reclaim." Mark leaned forward, confusion deepening. "What are you talking about? I didn't know any of that. I just gave him some money for a ticket." "How could that be so important?" Thal's eyes narrowed. The Sarthans weren't defeated just because of their military power. They were defeated because they were bound by an ancient pact. The pact tied them to their rule, their influence. But the moment you paid that ticket, you unknowingly broke the pact. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. "I didn't wait. Are you telling me that I've done something to set off a war?" "You didn't break the pact alone," Thal said, his voice soft but firm. "But you've triggered the beginning of a chain reaction. The Sarthans are not the only ones who will notice your actions. Others will come, forces you cannot even comprehend. The Intergalactic Council, the very one we represent, has been protecting your world from such forces for centuries. But now, that protection is fractured, because of you." Mark's mind spun, the words too much to process. "But you're saying you're here to protect me?" Thal nodded, but there was a coldness to his eyes that made Mark uneasy. "We are here to make sure you don't make the wrong choice, Mark. You are a key to something much larger than you realize. You may think that your actions were innocent, but they were calculated by forces much older than the Council itself." "What forces?" Mark asked, his voice rising despite himself. "Powerful factions, some of which want to control Earth, and some of which want to destroy it. The Sarthans are just one piece of a larger puzzle, Mark. The true enemies are not just aliens. They are concepts, ideas, powers that can bend reality itself." Mark's head swam with the weight of it all. "So you're telling me that I'm involved in some kind of intergalactic chess game?" "Precisely," Thal replied, a grim smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "But this is no game. This is survival." Before Mark could respond, a sharp noise filled the room and the holographic screens flickered to life. A new figure appeared on the display, an older man, draped in royal robes, his face stern and regal. "This is Governor Varian," Thal said, introducing him. "He is the one who will explain your role in all of this." The image of Governor Viren flickered again, his piercing eyes locking onto Mark's. "Mark, what you've awakened cannot be ignored," Varian said, his voice like a slow-moving storm. "The Sarthans may be just the beginning. There are forces, beings whose ambitions far exceed anything the Council can contain. If they learn of your involvement, Earth will be the first planet to fall." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you want me to do?" Governor Varian's eyes softened for the first time, but it did little to ease the tension Mark felt. "We want you to help us. You are the key to preventing a war between species that will ravage entire star systems. The time to act is now. Will you fight with us, Mark?" Or will you let the enemy take what you've unknowingly given them? Mark looked around the cold, sterile room. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. No matter what he chose, his life would never be the same again. But there was no going back now. Mark had barely processed the weight of Governor Virane's words when the atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted. The sleek metallic walls of the Nexus chamber, once filled with a hum of controlled calm, now seemed to thrum with an unsettling energy. As the hologram of Virion faded, Mark noticed that Commander Thal's expression had hardened, and the two silent soldiers flanking him seemed even more distant, their gazes fixed ahead like statues. "I thought you should know, Mark," Thal began, his voice taking on a darker tone. "The Council isn't as united as you might believe." Mark raised an eyebrow, confused. "What are you talking about? The way you've all spoken, it sounds like you're here to protect me from everything. But now you're saying there's something wrong with your own group." Thal didn't answer. Immediately, he glanced at the two soldiers who shifted uncomfortably. One of them, the taller of the two, took a step forward, his eyes never leaving Mark's. "There are factions within the Council," Thal finally said, his words measured. "Not all of them want peace. Some are intent on using your involvement for their own gain." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "But you said you were here to protect me. Are you betraying me?" Thal's eyes narrowed. "Not me. But some among us have different ideas about how to control this situation. They see your role as a tool, something to be used, not protected." Mark's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place too quickly for him to fully grasp. If the Council was divided, if some factions wanted to use him for their own agendas, then how could he trust anyone here? He had already been caught in the middle of something far beyond his understanding. And now he was learning that even the people who claimed to be his allies had their own hidden motives. "You're telling me that not everyone in the Council has good intentions?" Mark asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Thal sighed, his shoulders slumping as though the burden he carried had grown heavier. "Mark, when you're dealing with powers of this magnitude, loyalty becomes a luxury. The Council is divided into those who want to preserve the peace and those who want to exploit it. And there are people here, high-ranking officials, who would rather see the galaxy at war than risk losing their influence." Mark felt his pulse quicken. The implications were clear. If the Council was fractured, if its leaders couldn't even agree on the best way forward, then Mark's involvement could spark chaos instead of saving the galaxy. He might not have asked for any of this, but he was now a pivotal piece in a game where everyone around him had their own hidden agendas. "We need to be careful, Mark," Thal continued, his voice quieter now. "There's a faction within the Council led by a man named Draxon. He's one of the highest-ranking officers in the military wing of the Council, and he's pushing for a full-scale offensive against the Sarthans. He believes that Earth should be the first planet to be claimed in the name of the Council's peacekeeping force, but his motives aren't what they seem." Mark frowned, trying to piece everything together. "So Draxon wants to start a war, but why?" Thal's face hardened. "He wants to control the Sarthan relics. The ancient technology they've hidden away holds unimaginable power. Draxon believes that with those relics, he could reshape the galaxy to fit his vision. He would do whatever it takes to gain control of that power, even if it means starting a war." Mark shook his head, disbelief washing over him. "And you expect me to help stop him? How can I even trust you now if you're telling me there's someone within your own ranks who wants to destroy everything?" "I'm telling you because you need to know what's really at stake," Thal said, his eyes intense. "If Draxon gets his hands on those relics, he will not stop at Earth. He will turn the entire galaxy into his personal empire. And you, Mark, are the key to stopping him." Mark took a deep breath, the weight of the truth settling in. He hadn't signed up for this. He hadn't wanted to be a pawn in some intergalactic war. But now it seemed like there was no way out. His involvement in this conflict was far more than a simple mistake. It was the turning point in a battle that would decide the future of countless worlds. "I'm not some weapon," Mark said, his voice hardening with resolve. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just want to live my life." Thal looked at him with a mixture of understanding and regret. "I never said you were a weapon, Mark, but right now you're the only thing standing between the galaxy and those who want to tear it apart. Draxon has already begun moving, and the longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop him." Mark's mind spun as he considered the enormity of the situation. It wasn't just about his choices anymore. It was about the lives of countless innocent people who didn't even know they were at the mercy of forces they couldn't begin to understand. "I'll help you," Mark said, finally finding his voice. "But I need to know exactly what I'm getting into. I need to understand everything." Thal nodded slowly. "You'll have to, Mark. There's no more room for doubt. The moment you made the decision to help that alien, you stepped into a larger game. And now you're going to need everything you've got to win it." As Mark stood up, preparing for the next step, he realized just how deep this rabbit hole went. And with every passing moment, the stakes were getting higher. The ship's engines hummed as they sailed through the void, heading deeper into the unknown. Mark stood near the observation window, gazing out into the blackness of space, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. His world had turned upside down in just a few days. One act of kindness had dragged him into a galactic conflict, and now he was on the edge of something even darker. The revelations from Commander Thal weighed heavily on his mind. The fractured Council, Draxon's ambition, the relics of unimaginable power. It felt like Mark was standing at the center of a storm, but all he could do was hold on and hope he didn't get swept away. And if he didn't act soon, there would be no Earth left to save. "You're not alone in this, Mark." Mark turned around to see Thal standing in the doorway, his expression serious but not without a hint of weariness. The quiet moments between them had been few, but Mark could feel the burden that Thal carried. For all his stoic composure, Thal was just as much a part of the tangled mess that surrounded them. "I know," Mark replied, his voice steady but uncertain. "But I don't understand what I'm supposed to do. I've never been a soldier. I'm not some hero. Why should I be the one to stop this?" Thal stepped closer, his eyes locking onto Mark's. "Because, whether you like it or not, you've already made the choice. You triggered this, Mark. The fate of Earth and the galaxy lies with the decisions you make from here on out." Mark felt the weight of those words. He had no choice, no way out. Every decision from here on would lead to consequences beyond anything he could fathom. "You're not alone," Thal repeated. "But you must know this. The battle is not just against Draxon. The Sarthans are only the beginning. There are factions, unseen powers who have manipulated everything. You're caught in a web far older than the Council. This is about survival, Mark. Survival of the galaxy. Survival of your people." Mark stared at him, trying to understand the gravity of it all. Survival of Earth, and who else? Thal's eyes darkened. Survival of the innocent. The people you've never met, the worlds you've never seen. The Sarthans, Draxon, the Council. They are pieces in a larger game. If Draxon succeeds, Earth will be only the first to fall. This war will destroy countless civilizations. The peace you once knew will be lost forever. Suddenly, the lights in the ship flickered, and the comm was shattered by a loud alert. The ship's eye blared through the comms. "Incoming hostile vessels detected. Threat level high. Immediate action required." Mark's heart pounded in his chest. "What the hell is going on?" he asked, his voice tight. Thal's face turned grim. "They found us." Mark's stomach churned. The calm he had felt earlier vanished, replaced by a gut-wrenching realization that he wasn't just involved in a cosmic chess game anymore. He was a target. The stakes had just escalated from bad to catastrophic. Thal motioned for Mark to follow. Him, we don't have time to explain. Get to the armory. We're heading to the front lines. The ship's corridors seemed endless as they moved swiftly, the sounds of alarms echoing through the walls. Mark tried to steady his nerves as they reached the armory, a heavily fortified chamber lined with weapons that looked as advanced as... They were terrifying. Thal didn't hesitate, grabbing a sleek rifle-like weapon off the wall and handing it to Mark. "You're going to need this," Thal said, his voice low. "These are no ordinary enemies. Draxon's forces are powerful, but so are his allies. You've been trained for this moment, whether you like it or not." Mark took the weapon, his hands trembling slightly as he held it. It felt alien in his grip, but he understood the weight of it. This wasn't a choice. He was a part of something much bigger now. And in that moment, he realized that survival was no longer just about him, it was about everything. The ship jerked violently, and the lights dimmed as it entered a battleground. Mark looked out of the window as enemy ships appeared in front of them, sleek, black, and ominous. They were fast, too fast, weaving in and out of the stars like predators stalking their prey. Their weapons lit up the dark expanse, the sounds of blasts echoing through space. "They're here," Thal muttered, his eyes sharp. "Stay sharp, Mark. These forces are relentless. We're the only defense they have left." The ship rocked again, and Mark's body was thrown forward. He instinctively gripped his weapon, fighting to maintain his balance. The battle had begun. Thal gestured to a small group of soldiers, motioning for Mark to join them. "Stay with the team. If we fail, Earth will fall. But if we succeed, we can stop Draxon before he can reach the relics." Mark nodded, his resolve hardening. He wasn't the hero, he wasn't some trained soldier. But in this moment, he understood the truth. This was about survival. And if he didn't fight, everything he knew and loved would be lost. The first wave of enemy ships tore through space, their weapons firing relentlessly. The ship shuddered again, and Mark found himself at the center of the chaos, fighting for survival, not just for himself, but for the future of Earth and every innocent life caught in the crossfire. "Ready yourself, Mark," Thal said, his voice grim but filled with determination. "It's either us or them. The galaxy's fate is in your hands." As Mark stepped into the heart of the battle, he knew one thing. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to keep the light alive in a galaxy plunging into darkness. The chaos of battle raged around Mark. The ship's walls shook with each impact as enemy vessels clawed at the ship's hull. The air inside the command center was thick with tension, the harsh scent of burned metal mixing with the staleness of recycled air. The crew worked in frantic unison, guiding the ship through the madness of laser fire and explosions. Mark clutched his weapon, his fingers numb from the pressure. "Keep moving," Thal barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "We're almost there." Mark could barely hear him over the blaring alarms and the low hum of the ship's failing systems. It had only been hours since the first attack, but it felt like days. He had barely managed to stay alive in the last few skirmishes, his heart racing with every close call. The constant barrage from enemy ships had left him no room to think, no time to question his place in all this. But as the ship neared the final destination, Mark knew one thing: everything was about to change. He followed Thal and the others through the maze of corridors, his mind spinning with what he'd learned. The relics Draxon sought, the ancient, incomprehensible powers hidden by the Sarthans, were said to hold the key to controlling reality itself. Whoever controlled the relics would not only dictate the future of the galaxy, but reshape it in their own image. Draxon, with his army of loyal soldiers, would bring the entire galaxy under his rule if he succeeded. But if Mark failed, if he couldn't stop Draxon, then everything he had fought for, everything he had become, would be for nothing. The galaxy would burn. The hallway ahead opened into a large chamber, the heart of the ship's operations. A massive holographic map of the galaxy flickered on the central console, showing the locations of allied and enemy forces, as well as the final approach to the relic's last known coordinates. The tension in the room was palpable, each face strained, as though they could feel the weight of the entire galaxy on their shoulders. "We've reached the coordinates," Thal said, his voice steady but strained. "This is it, Mark. The final choice. You're either with us or you're against us." Mark stopped in his tracks. His mind raced. Was this truly his decision to make? Could he really stop Draxon? Could he destroy the relics to ensure they never fell into the wrong hands? The power to rewrite the fabric of the universe, to reshape life itself, was almost too much to comprehend. Could one man, even one with the fate of the universe on his shoulders, be trusted with that kind of power? "What happens if we fail?" Mark asked, his voice rough. "What happens if I can't stop him?" Thal's expression darkened. "Then, the galaxy falls into chaos. The Sarthans will be reborn, and the old empire will rise again. Draxon will rule, and the rest of us, every world, every civilization, will fall under his shadow. You're the only one who can stop it." The weight of the decision hit Mark like a physical blow. There was no time left for indecision. The first wave of enemy forces was already on their tail, and soon, Draxon's fleet would be upon them. This was the moment, the last chance to stop the galaxy from descending into a new, brutal era. He looked up at the holographic map, at the swirling chaos of space and the tiny, fragile speck that was Earth. His planet, his people, hung in the balance. Mark didn't know if he was ready for the responsibility. But one thing was clear, there was no going back. "We can't let Draxon win," Mark said, his voice filled with a new sense of resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes." Thal nodded, his expression proud but somber. "You've made the right choice. We'll do it together." As they moved toward the final chamber, where the relics were hidden, the atmosphere seemed to thicken. Mark's pulse quickened with each step. He had come so far, and now, as the door to the chamber slid open, he faced the culmination of everything, the relics themselves. The room was vast, bathed in a cold blue light that emanated from the relics on display in the center. They were not what Mark had expected. There were no ancient weapons or glowing crystals, just intricate, geometric objects, their surfaces shifting and changing, as though they were alive. It was like looking at the raw essence of the universe itself, a power so alien, so profound, that it defied understanding. Mark stood frozen, his hand hovering over the relics, but before he could take another step, a voice boomed from the doorway. "Draxon, so you've come," Draxon said, his voice filled with disdain. "I was hoping you'd make it this far. But now you'll regret it." The massive doors to the chamber slammed shut behind Mark and Thal, sealing them in. Draxon stood there, flanked by his loyal soldiers, his presence as commanding as ever. The tension in the air was unbearable. Mark could feel it, like the universe itself was holding its breath. "This is it, Mark," Draxon sneered. "The end of your foolish resistance." Mark's grip tightened on his weapon. The choice was his now. He could use the relics. He could bend reality to his will, but he knew the risks. If he used them, there would be no going back. He would become a force of unimaginable power, and the galaxy would be reshaped in his image. But was it worth it? Would it corrupt him, just as Draxon sought to use them for his own twisted ambitions? Mark's eyes flicked between Draxon and the relics, the weight of his decision settling in. The final choice was his. With a deep breath, Mark stepped forward. "No more games, Draxon. This ends now." In that moment, Mark realized that no matter what happened next, it wasn't about the relics. It was about what he chose to become. And as he made his choice, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, waiting for him to make the final move.